Robert De Niro needed one single film role to become a legend. Helen Mirren needed 4 decades to get the same recognition. 1. Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro first appeared on screen in 1973 as a small-time criminal nobody outside a narrow circle of film critics had heard of. In Mean Streets, De Niro played a reckless numbers runner opposite Harvey Keitel, a performance that caught Martin Scorsese's full attention and led directly to The Godfather Part 2 1 year later. He won an Academy Award for that role without speaking a single line of English on screen. More than 5 decades on, De Niro remains one of the most consistently working actors of his generation, earning an Oscar nomination in 2024 for Killers of the Flower Moon and continuing to headline major productions well into his 80s. 2. Al Pacino. Al Pacino walked into The Godfather in 1972 playing a quiet, college-educated son nobody expected to inherit a crime empire. That reluctant heir, standing beside Marlon Brando, turned Pacino into a star almost overnight and carried him straight into Serpico and Dog Day Afternoon within just a few years. Decades later, well past his 80th birthday, Pacino has continued choosing selective film roles rather than stepping away entirely, still carrying the same intensity that once made Michael Corleone impossible to look away from. 2 names in, and both built entire careers on a single early role that could have gone almost anyone else. 3. Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep spent her first year out of Yale Drama School scrubbing floors for a paycheck, not reading film scripts. Her first real film role arrived in 1978 in The Deer Hunter, followed 1 year later by an Academy Award for Kramer vs. Kramer. Streep has continued working steadily since, recently honored alongside De Niro himself at a Film Heritage Gala in 2026. Decades after the two first crossed paths on a movie set, neither could have predicted would define their careers. 4. Michael Caine. Michael Caine's story took the strangest turn of anyone on this list, and it happened twice. Caine broke through in the 1960s with Zulu and Alfie, cementing a Cockney accent and a leading man image that carried him across 8 decades of film. In 2023, at the age of 90, Caine formally announced his retirement following The Great Escaper, stating plainly that leading roles were unlikely to come his way much longer. 2 years later, at 92, he reversed that decision entirely, returning to reprise a supporting role for a long-delayed sequel, proving retirement meant something different for him than it does for most. First stories in, and a pattern is starting to form around who gets recognized early and who does not. 5. Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman spent decades working in theater and television before Hollywood noticed him at all. His breakout did not arrive until 1989, when Driving Miss Daisy made him a recognizable film star at 52 years old, an age when many careers are already winding down rather than beginning. Freeman has continued working steadily into his late 80s, proof that a slow start carries no bearing on how long a career can eventually run. 6. Judi Dench. Judi Dench became a household name on a similarly delayed timeline. Cast as M in Goldeneye in 1995 at 60 years old. Decades of respected stage work in Britain came before that role ever reached her, and decades of continued film and voice work have followed since. Dench remains active in the industry today, choosing projects carefully rather than stepping back from the work altogether. 7. Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins built his reputation on a single unforgettable performance in 1991 as a courteous, terrifying killer in The Silence of the Lambs. That role earned him an Academy Award and reshaped how audiences saw screen villains for a generation afterward. 3 decades later, Hopkins became the oldest performer ever to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, taking the honor for The Father in 2021 at 83 years old, and he has continued accepting film roles in the years since. 7 stories in, and none of these careers moved in a straight line from young to old. 8. Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda's breakout came in 1971 with Clute, a role that earned her first Academy Award and established her as one of the defining actresses of her decade. Fonda spent the years that followed building a parallel career as an activist and fitness entrepreneur, never limiting herself to acting alone. She has continued working steadily in film and television well past her 80th birthday, still recognized as one of the most active performers of her generation. 9. Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood built his early career on westerns. Riding into fame through a fistful of dollars before Dirty Harry made him a defining figure of 1970s American cinema. Eastwood eventually stepped away from acting almost entirely, choosing instead to direct. He released Juror No. 2 in 2024, a full film credit arriving well into his 90s, decades after most directors have set down the camera for good. 10. Helen Mirren. Helen Mirren spent the majority of her career working in British theater and television, largely outside the reach of major Hollywood recognition. Global film stardom did not arrive until 2006, when the Queen earned her an Academy Award at 61 years old. Mirren has since continued headlining major franchise films into her 70s and 80s, a second act many performers never get the chance to build at all. 11 names in, and one story bends the pattern further than any other on this list. 11. Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke danced across rooftops in Mary Poppins in 1964, decades before anyone imagined him still working past the century mark. That film, paired with Julie Andrews, helped cement a career that stretched across 6 decades of stage and screen work. In 2024, Van Dyke became the oldest performer ever to win a Daytime Emmy, taking the honor at 98 years old for a guest appearance on the soap opera Days of Our Lives. He appeared in a Coldplay music video that same year, and he celebrated his 100th birthday in December 2025, while telling interviewers he still hoped to find more work. A career built on chimney sweeps and rooftop dances turned, somehow, into a real-life lesson in never actually retiring. 12. Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford spent years working as a carpenter and taking small film roles nobody remembers before Star Wars made him famous in 1977. That single role as Han Solo, followed 2 years later by his first turn as Indiana Jones, defined the next 4 decades of his career and made him one of the highest-paid actors in film history. Turning 84 in July 2026, Ford is currently experiencing what critics have called a genuine late-career renaissance, earning his first ever Emmy nomination for the series Shrinking, joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the first time as President Thaddeus Ross, and continuing to headline the drama series 1923. Few actors get a second creative peak this late in a career, and Ford appears to be building one regardless. 13. Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson spent nearly 2 decades taking small supporting roles before Pulp Fiction made him a star in 1994 at 45 years old. His performance as Jules Winfield earned him a BAFTA Award and an Academy Award nomination, and director Quentin Tarantino has said he wrote the role specifically with Jackson in mind. Jackson has since appeared in more than 150 films, making him the highest-grossing actor in box office history, and he received an honorary Academy Award in 2022 recognizing a career the Academy described as influential across genres and generations. A slow, patient star in supporting roles eventually became the most commercially successful acting career Hollywood has ever recorded. 14. Sophia Loren. Sophia Loren grew up in poverty in Naples, entering a beauty pageant at 14 years old, wearing a dress her grandmother sewed from old curtains. She went on to become the first performer ever to win an Academy Award for a non-English language performance, taking Best Actress in 1960 for 2 women. Loren stepped back from film through much of the 1980s and 1990s, then returned in 2020 at 86 years old for The Life Ahead, directed by her own son, earning some of the best reviews of her career and confirming her standing as the last living major female star of Hollywood's golden age. A career that began with a homemade pageant dress ended up spanning more than 7 decades and 2 entirely different years of stardom. 14 careers, and not one of them followed the same timeline toward recognition. Some of these performers became famous within a single early role, while others waited decades for an industry to notice work they had already been doing for years. Age did not close a single one of these careers, and in several cases, it opened doors that had stayed shut for decades beforehand. If watching how these careers actually unfolded changed how you think about age in this industry, consider subscribing to AgelessStars for more real stories behind the performers you grew up watching. Tell us in the comments whose transformation surprised you the most. Until next time, Ageless Stars will keep bringing the past back to life.